Hey everybody, Corey here, coming at you with another knife review video. This time it is of the Benchmade Mini Crooked River. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. I do knife videos all the time. This Mini Crooked River might look different to you than most that you're used to seeing because this one is from the Customizer shop. That being said, from a review perspective, the only thing functionally different on this knife is the deep carry pocket clip as opposed to the standard arrow pocket clip. Everything else is functionally the same. I just have different materials than you might have. That being said, let's jump into my overall impressions of this knife that I do because most of you don't watch the entire video, you damn bastards. So here's the short version. This knife is going to run you typically about $200 if you get the retail version. It's going to run you a little bit closer to $300 once you start using the Customizer shop. Do I think it's worth it? At the $300 Customizer shop price? No, absolutely not. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. At the $200 price point, it's closer. Still feels a little dirty to me. I feel like this knife should be a little bit closer to like $170, but you're paying the Benchmade tax, whatever. Let's talk about why I feel the way that I feel. Okay, numero uno, don't get the deep carry clip on this knife. It's very rare that I make definitive statements like this. The deep carry clip on the Benchmade Mini Crooked River, this is the first time in my life that I've dealt with a pocket clip on a knife that makes me go, oh my God, I hate it. I hate it so much. It's a massive hot spot. The way it digs into my hand, it's too high. It just doesn't work on this knife with this placement. Get the arrow clip. Okay, that's fine. You can get the default arrow clip. That's great. From a fit and finish perspective, you're dealing with usual Benchmade here. What does that mean? What that means is that some of you are going to have really good luck and you're going to have an amazing knife straight out of the box. What that also means is that some of you are going to be dealing with BS the entire life of the knife or until you send it into warranty, maybe multiple times. What's my big problem here? I've had this knife for 7 months. I have polished the washers. I have tried every different type of lube. I've spent hours and hours trying to manually break it in. This knife will not drop shut. As a matter of fact, this pivot is loose right now, and I've got some blade play. The knife still won't drop shut. That's something that a lot of people experience with their Axis lock knives. For those of you who aren't familiar, here's a button lock, but this is what an Axis lock does when it's functioning properly. It has almost no friction, and you can literally just sit there and swing the blade around frictionless, and it's really fun. It's a really good time. A lot of people look for that in their Benchmades. Just typical Benchmade fit and finish. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's really bad. If that's something that you want to gamble on, hey, more power to you, but that's what I have to say about that. Otherwise, in terms of the ergos, the jimping is borderline useless. It's very slippery. I would almost argue that it's primarily for aesthetics. It barely provides any traction on the knife. The neutral grip is generally pretty good. At the same time, a neutral grip is always going to be just kind of fine. In my opinion, this knife is like a solid 7 out of 10, right? The fit and finish, it's okay. You know, other than the action, I really don't have a lot to complain about. Sometimes the Axis lock sticks. It is what it is, I guess. The ergonomics, they're okay. Probably better than average, but still, they don't blow my mind. And that's kind of my takeaway with this knife. I do like it. Would I buy it again? No. I really would have kind of preferred that I, rented the knife or got it as a loaner and just did a review and never saw it again. I like this one. I think it's sexy. It's a 10 out of 10 because I built it myself in the Customizer shop. But, the retail one, it's just not for me. In terms of just what you're getting here, I think it's just too close to fine to really justify a $200 to $300 price point. I think once you get to 200 bucks and above, we're looking for just great. We're looking for objectively great. And this knife definitely gives me fine vibes. That being said, could this be the only knife that you ever own for your entire life? Yeah, probably. At the end of the day, it's still Benchmade. You can still send it into their warranty department whenever you want, and they'll take care of you for the most part, you know? That being said, as a knife aficionado, it's just not really my thing. There's not enough that's compelling here to keep me around. I think it's very attractive. It might be my most attractive knife, but again, that's only because I built it in the customizer shop. By default, definitely not what I would say. So, overall, would I personally recommend this knife? Not really. If you look at it and you go gaga over it, then go ahead, go get it. It's a Benchmade. You'll be fine. For me, probably wouldn't purchase it again. But for those of you who are still interested in learning a little bit more and hearing about the specifics, stick around. We will get into that. For the rest of you, love you guys. Enjoy your day, enjoy your Benchmade or whatever it is you're dealing with right now. So, all right, let's get moving. All right, guys, let's get into the specifications of the Benchmade Mini Crooked River. What you're primarily going to care about is length and thickness. So it has an overall length of 7.9 inches with a blade length of 3.4 inches. It has a blade thickness of 0.11 inches, which is actually relatively thinner than some of the knives that are being made these days, and a handle thickness of about half an inch, 0.52 inches. That handle thickness is actually quite nice because it reduces the hot spots on the bottom and the top of the knife because the knife is relatively wide. I have these knives stacked butt to butt. On top is the off-grid knife Scorpion, our conventionally large knife, and on the bottom is our Ontario knives Rat number 2. You can see that the Mini Crooked River sits comfortably between them. That's exactly what I would say about this knife. It is an average size knife. It's not too big, it's not too small. The bears would be happy. This one is just right. In a few seconds, I'll put the specifications on the screen in terms of how this specifically compares against the two knives that you see here. Alright guys, so let's talk about the ergos on this knife. So as you can see here, it has a pretty neutral handle. There's a little bit of curve to it, but for the most part, it's pretty neutral. I don't find that this kind of hump right here, the choil up front, I don't find that it interferes. It actually does sit quite comfortably between my two fingers as I grip the knife like this. That being said, having such a neutral grip, while it's generally good, it's probably not going to be perfect for anybody because it's just so kind of generic. In terms of the jimping, I mentioned this earlier, but the jimping is just, it looks like it should be aggressive, but it's just not. It's actually really smooth, and I wouldn't say it's completely useless, but it just really doesn't provide a whole lot of traction. It really doesn't do a lot for me. The axis lock, as always, is actually pretty accessible. No problems with that, not to be confused with how I feel about the action, but the axis lock is very accessible, no issues there. The only other thing I'll talk about, again, the pocket clip. The deep carry one, not for me. It just sits in the most awkward position. It's just right there. It's right there up in your hand, and you feel it so much on this knife. I don't know why. It's the placement, it's the clip. It just doesn't work on the Mini Crooked River, in my opinion. That being said, again, you can always just use the default arrow clip, which is positioned a little bit further up, and I think you'll be absolutely fine if that's the case. Other than that, no substantial hot spots to note. The weight is good. It's generally pretty comfortable. You don't notice it too much in your pocket, even though it's pretty thick. The blade is thin enough to be functional, but it's thick enough to be pretty robust. Overall, pretty good. So what does this knife do well? What do I think it could improve? Well, you know, to be honest, a lot of this isn't going to be specific to this knife. It's going to be specific to Benchmade as a company. The knife generally does everything pretty well. The fit and finish is pretty good. You know, my main complaint is the axis lock on this one. You know, with Benchmade, it seems like when it comes to fit and finish, oh my gosh, it's hit or miss. Doing this under a camera, this actually makes it look worse than it is. But yeah, when it comes to fit and finish with Benchmade, you're kind of gambling these days. And I don't like that. Again, it's not specific to this knife, but it is relevant for this knife because, you know, it's made by Benchmade. But I do wish Benchmade would kind of step it up. I do wish that, you know, especially for what you pay, I would hope that you wouldn't even really have to use the warranty. I would hope that this just worked. I mean, that's the goal, right? So those are my overthoughts in terms of what it could do better. In terms of what it does well, you know, for this one specifically, the custom shop is nice. I like that the custom shop is nice. The finish is nice. Everything is exactly what I expected, but I don't want to keep that specific to the custom shop. In terms of what this one specifically does well, gosh, I feel like I'm having a revelation here. You know what? This is just, it's a good knife. It's fine. I would say what this does well is just being an overall good knife. It's good at everything. It doesn't really feel like it excels at anything. It's a very functional blade shape. It's a pretty ergonomic handle, but as I said originally, it's kind of like straight 7 out of 10s, which for some of you might be bad. For some of you, that might be exactly what you're looking for. Maybe you're looking for a knife that's a jack of all trades, and I feel like this one could definitely fit that role in your collection. It's, you know, a higher quality, higher price point knife with higher materials or higher quality materials. So, you know, maybe that's what you're paying for in comparison to, say, like the CJRB Feldspar. I actually describe that knife the same way I'm describing this knife, which is good at everything, great at nothing, but you're getting different materials and a different build overall. So that being said, what this knife does well is essentially, in my opinion, being a jack of all trades and probably being good for every generic task that you could ever think of with a knife. So, quality control. Gosh, you know, Benchmade, I don't want to beat this horse to death, but Benchmade's quality straight from the factory, it has always been known to be kind of spotty. Maybe not so much back in the day, but as of late, yeah, it's definitely something that's been going on for a little bit now. Some people get wonderful, perfect knives straight from the factory. Some people get hellish, nightmarish knives straight from the factory. You know, I really wish I had a gravity shut. Oh my god, it finally did it. It did it on camera. Let's try that again. Oh. Nope. I do wish I had a gravity shut knife. And again, remember, the only reason it's this smooth is because I have substantial blade play, okay? But, you know, for an axis lock knife, that's what you're looking for, right? Put this up against my ProTech Malibu. Look, I get it. It's a button lock. But in theory, when an axis lock is broken in, that's what it should do. That's it. You've seen them do it. You've seen Benchmades do it. You know that this one should be capable of that. As such, you know, quality control, on the whole, it's fine. If you're not a knife snob, you probably won't even notice. And if you're not a knife snob, you probably don't even care that it doesn't drop shut. However, I think that that's kind of the allure. I think one of the coolest things you can do with the Benchmade is just hold it up and disengage the lock and watch it fall. And when you can't do that, it's like, you know, I don't know. It's just something that it's lacking. So QC, as always, I think Benchmade could do a little bit better. I think they could be more consistent. But that being said, you could very well get one of these and it could be totally fine. But that's part of the problem. All right. That's QC. All right, guys, let's talk about value. And I just brought this other knife out, but I think it's pretty relevant. So the Benchmade Mini Crooked River. Here's a ProTech Malibu. Don't mind that it's different. It's a limited edition, but it's a ProTech Malibu at its core. And here's your Benchmade Mini Crooked River. In terms of value, so a normal non-custom Mini Crooked River is going to run you about $205. A ProTech Malibu non-limited edition, blah blah blah, runs you about $220. Okay, yes, this knife is $15 more, but for what you get out of the box, it's just better. It's just better, you know, and I feel like this is a really relevant comparison to make. They're kind of close in size. You know, the Mini Crooked River is bigger in overall length, but in terms of handle, right? Look at the Mini Crooked River. Look at what's sticking out at the end, right? Do I really need that extra? The ProTech Malibu is probably as close to perfect as I'm going to get, you know, for my specific hand, but let's not talk about my hands. Let's talk about a comparison here, right? $200 for a Benchmade Mini Crooked River. With everything that I've said, do you feel comfortable paying $200 for a knife that is, you know, 7 out of 10 across the board? Do you feel comfortable paying $200 for an Axis lock knife that may or may not ever drop shut, even after 7 months of consistent wear and cleaning and breaking in? Are you comfortable with that? All right, well, if you are, go ahead, buy one. For me, I'm not comfortable with that. And if you asked me if I would purchase this knife a second time, I would say no. However, if you asked me if I would purchase another ProTech Malibu, I'd say, yup, I would do it all over again. This one has one specific issue. I'll save that for the review, but it's very unique to the creation of this knife, not ProTech as a whole. I'll tell you what, man, that button lock was smooth right out of the gate. There was nothing I had to do to break it in. Yeah, there was a little bit of lock stick, but once you got past the lock stick, it just shuts. It gravity shuts. And this is exactly what an Axis lock should do once it's broken in, okay? Look at this. This is even cooler, right? Let's disengage the button lock. Look at how, oh my God, look at how smooth that is, okay? Look, for 15 bucks more, I would argue this knife has better ergos. I would definitely say it has a better action. I would say the fit and finish is better. For 15 more bucks, I feel like the Mini Crooked River just doesn't compete with other similar knives in that price range. That's what I have to say about value. All right, personal opinions. You know, for me, this might have been the knife prior to my Chris Reeve that I was most excited about. This was my first true custom. You know, I built this from the ground up, and you know, I was so excited, and it kind of actually reminded me of my ZT. The day I got it, I was like, wow, this thing is not ready for human hands. There was a lot of tuning that I had to do out of the box. The action was so stiff that I had to take, you know, a Torx bit to it and loosen the pivot and readjust it myself and clean it out and all this other stuff. It's so hard for me, right? Because the knife on its own, it looks and feels like a pretty good knife, but somehow when you throw in Benchmade's spotty quality control, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right to me from a custom perspective, and it doesn't feel right to me from a retail off-the-shelf perspective. This is a knife that, you know, I do like. I think it's my most attractive knife, but I should, because I built it. I made this knife exactly the way I wanted it. Of course, this is the knife that I'm going to think is the best looking knife in my collection. It's the only one that I've essentially designed myself. That being said, you know, from a value perspective and just from the hassle, and I hate to say it, but the hassle of worrying about your Benchmade and worrying if you're going to get a good Benchmade and worrying if you're going to have to deal with the warranty department or the Omega Spring or whatever the case might be, it's just not there. It's not there for me. I would not buy this knife again if I was given the choice. And you know, I almost regret putting my initials on it because anyone want to buy this? Anyone want to buy this off me now that it has my initials on it? I don't know. I don't know. It's a lesson learned, but it was an expensive lesson learned. And for me, it's just not there. I think, you know, if you're the kind of person who loves this knife, you love this design, you love the shape, whatever the case might be, you're Benchmade dedicated, maybe it's for you. Maybe it's something you'd be interested in. Maybe it's something you would enjoy taking to the custom shop. But for me, it's a no-go. It's a no-go for me. So finally, my favorite and least favorite things about the knife. My favorite is what you can do to this in the custom shop, which really sucks because now I'm tacking on like an extra $100 to the price of the knife. But come on, guys. Tell me this isn't attractive. Hey, I mean, maybe you don't like all black, but my thing has always been black and gold. This is just, it's a really nice looking design. Outside of the custom shop, outside of what I did to it, I've always thought the Mini Crooked River was a really attractive looking knife in general. Being able to take it into the custom shop is just like, it's that cherry on top. But again, that being my favorite thing, I don't know. Now you're looking at a $300 knife. That makes the value proposition even worse than it already was. But that being said, objectively, price not being considered, my favorite thing about this knife is what you can do to it in the custom shop. My least favorite thing, again, man, I'm going to beat this horse to death. Benchmade quality. When you're at $200+, you shouldn't have to gamble with quality. It's as straightforward as that. Again, put this up against a competitor that's great out of the box like a ProTech Malibu. Nope, no comparison. So, hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you found it entertaining. I wish you all the luck in the world in your knife endeavors. I'll see you guys next time.